The dollar just flinched and you didn't even notice. Markets don't panic over nothing. When stocks slide across 3 continents in 48 hours, when the world's reserve currency stumbles, when Asian traders are dumping positions before New York even opens, that's not volatility, that's fear. And what are they afraid of? An island covered in ice that most Americans couldn't find on a map. Except it's not about the ice. It's about what's underneath it. It's about who controls the Arctic. And it's about the fact that the United States just announced it's willing to destroy its oldest alliance system to get it. Greenland holds rare earth minerals worth trillions, not billions, trillions. The kind of deposits that determine who builds the missiles, who powers the AI, who controls the semiconductor supply chain for the next 50 years. And right now, Denmark owns it on paper. China's investing in it in practice, and America just woke up to the fact that we're late to the most important resource grab of the century. So Trump said it out loud. 100% tariffs on Denmark unless they negotiate. And the EU responded with the diplomatic equivalent of, "We'll protect our interests." Great. With what army? Here's what just happened in the span of 1 week. The United States threatened a founding NATO member with economic warfare, told the UK their foreign policy is an act of great stupidity, watched the dollar struggle as global markets repriced American reliability. And then, and this is the part you need to pay attention to, invited China to join a peace board. You're watching the architecture of the post-World War II order get dismantled in real time. And the markets are telling you they don't think we're building anything to replace it. Greenland, 836,000 square miles. Population, 57,000. Military capability, 0. Rare earth reserves, 25 million tons. Rare earths control every advanced weapon system, every EV battery, every smartphone, every wind turbine. China currently processes 70% of the world's rare earths. You see the problem yet? The U.S. military is entirely dependent on rare earth magnets for F-35 fighters, guided missiles, satellite systems, and nuclear submarines. We import almost all of it. And the country we're in a Cold War with controls the supply. So when people say Greenland is a distraction, what they mean is they don't understand supply chain warfare. Denmark can't defend Greenland. They have 16 ships in their navy. The U.S. Navy has 296. They have 7,000 active troops. We have 1.3 million. Their GDP is $400 billion. Ours is $27 trillion. This isn't a negotiation between equals. This is a superpower realizing it needs something and deciding the rule book doesn't matter anymore. And Europe knows it. That's why stocks slid. That's why the euro gained against the dollar. Because if America can economically coerce Denmark, it can coerce anyone. Every EU trade deal, every security guarantee, every defense commitment is now conditional on whether we feel like honoring it. The EU says they'll protect their interests. How? Sanctions? They tried that in 2018 over steel and aluminum. It cost them $7 billion in exports, and we didn't blink. Military force? They can't even defend their own borders without American logistics. Diplomatic isolation? They need us more than we need them, and everybody knows it. So what's the EU's actual play here? Capitulation with a press release. They'll make noise, issue statements, and eventually fold, because they have no choice. But here's where it gets worse. Top U.S. archbishops just announced American foreign policy, not immigration policy, not domestic issues, foreign policy. The Catholic Church, an institution that has 1.3 billion members globally, is publicly breaking with the U.S. government over how we're conducting ourselves on the world stage. When was the last time that happened? Vietnam. And we all know how that ended. This isn't just moral grandstanding. This is the Church recognizing that American actions are destabilizing global order in ways that threaten human security everywhere. When religious institutions start drawing red lines, it means the public consent for these policies is collapsing. And when public consent collapses, governments either change course or double down. Right now, we're doubling down. Anti-ICE protests are erupting at churches in Minnesota. Federal agents are raiding sanctuaries. Local sheriffs are refusing to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. You've got blue states threatening to withhold tax revenue, red states threatening to deploy National Guard units to the border, and the social contract that holds this country together is fraying in real time. You think that's disconnected from Greenland? It's not. It's the same strategy. Use coercion, ignore norms, dare anyone to stop you, whether it's ICE pulling people out of churches or threatening tariffs on NATO allies. The message is the same: compliance or consequences. And here's what that does domestically. It breaks trust, not just between citizens and government, but between citizens and each other. Half the country thinks we're protecting sovereignty. The other half thinks we're sliding into authoritarianism, and neither side believes the system will protect them anymore. That's not a policy debate. That's pre-collapse fragmentation. Now, let's talk about the UK. Trump called British policy an act of great stupidity. The United Kingdom, our oldest military ally. The country we share Five Eyes intelligence with. The country that followed us into Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, every war, every intervention, every time we asked. And we just humiliated them in public. Why? Because they wouldn't bend on some trade or regulatory issue that probably affects 0.2% of bilateral trade. That's it. That's the threshold now. Total loyalty or public humiliation. Here's what that tells Japan. Your security guarantee is conditional. Here's what that tells South Korea. We'll abandon you if it's convenient. Here's what that tells Germany. You're on your own. And they're listening. Japan just announced a $320 billion defense budget increase, the largest in their post-war history. South Korea is developing independent nuclear capabilities. Germany is rearming. These aren't signs of a strong alliance. These are signs of allies hedging against American abandonment. When allies stop trusting you, they start making contingency plans. And those contingency plans include talking to Beijing. China just confirmed an invitation to join Trump's peace board. Let me say that again. The country we're supposed to be containing just got invited to co-manage global security. You understand what that means? That means we're admitting we can't do it alone. That means China gets legitimized as a co-equal power. That means every territorial dispute, every trade conflict, every flashpoint in the Pacific is now a negotiation instead of a red line. Taiwan? Bargaining chip. South China Sea? Negotiable. Belt and Road? Infrastructure development, not debt trap diplomacy. We spent the last 5 years trying to decouple from China, reshore critical industries, build alternative supply chains, and now we're inviting them to write the rules with us. You know what Beijing learned from this? That we're weak, that we're overstretched, under-resourced, and desperate for an off-ramp. And weak powers don't dictate terms. They make concessions. Every time we threatened China over the last decade, we drew a line. No more intellectual property theft, no more South China Sea militarization, no more Uyghur forced labor in supply chains. And then we invited them to a peace board. What do you think happens to those red lines now? They disappear. Because if you're negotiating with someone as an equal, you can't simultaneously be threatening them with containment. You pick one strategy or the other. And we just picked accommodation. The markets are screaming at you. Stocks fell in New York, then London, then Frankfurt, then Tokyo, then Hong Kong. 3 continents, 48 hours, coordinated sell-offs. That's not a coincidence. That's global capital repricing American reliability. When the dollar struggles, it's not because of interest rates or inflation. It's because reserve currency status is based on trust. Trust that the U.S. will honor its debts. Trust that we'll defend the global order. Trust that holding dollars is safer than holding euros or yuan or gold. And that trust just took a hit. Because if we'll threaten Denmark, a NATO ally, a liberal democracy, a country that's never threatened us, over an island, what does that say about treasury bonds? What does that say about trade agreements? What does that say about the entire framework that makes the dollar valuable? It says everything is conditional now, and conditional currencies don't stay reserve currencies. You want to know what happens if the dollar loses reserve status? Your imported goods cost 40% more overnight. Your retirement savings lose a third of their value. Interest rates on your mortgage double. And the U.S. government loses the ability to print its way out of debt. That's not a recession. That's restructuring. And restructuring means somebody wins and somebody loses. Right now, the markets are betting we're about to lose. So let's connect the dots you're ignoring. Greenland tariffs aren't about Greenland. They're about securing rare earths before the next war. Attacks on the UK aren't about policy. They're about signaling that loyalty doesn't matter anymore. Inviting China to the peace board isn't diplomacy. It's admitting we can't manage global security alone. ICE raids at churches aren't immigration enforcement. They're testing how far coercion can go before the system breaks. And the dollar struggling isn't market volatility. It's the world pricing in American decline. These aren't separate stories. They're the same story. The story of a superpower that's overstretched, under-allied, and running out of time to lock in the resources it needs for the next phase of global competition. And here's the part nobody's saying out loud. We might be too late. China's already in Greenland. They've got mining contracts, infrastructure investments, and political relationships that took a decade to build. We're showing up with tariffs and threats. That's not strategy. That's panic. Europe's already hedging. They're talking to Beijing about alternative payment systems, trade routes that bypass the U.S., and security arrangements that don't depend on NATO. We're calling them stupid. That's not leadership. That's alienation. And our own population is fracturing. Half the country thinks we're finally standing up for American interests. The other half thinks we're burning alliances and credibility for short-term wins. And neither side can convince the other because we've stopped speaking the same language. Here's the question you need to answer. Do you think the markets are overreacting? Or do you think they're seeing something you're not paying attention to? Because right now, global capital is making a bet. It's betting that American reliability is in question, that the dollar's dominance is in doubt, that the alliance system that kept the peace for 80 years is crumbling. And if they're right, if this is the beginning of a multipolar world where the U.S. is one power among many instead of the dominant hegemon, then everything changes. Your job? Depends on global supply chains we no longer control. Your savings? Denominated in a currency that's losing trust. Your security? Guaranteed by alliances we're actively undermining. You think Greenland is far away? It's not. It's the canary in the coal mine. It's the first asset we're willing to threaten allies over. And once that precedent is set, everything else is negotiable. Taiwan, oil shipments through the Persian Gulf, semiconductor fabs in Arizona, rare earths in Greenland. We're not defending the global order anymore. We're scavenging it. While we're threatening Denmark and yelling at the UK, Beijing is signing trade deals in Latin America, building ports in Africa, financing infrastructure in Southeast Asia. They're not coercing allies, they're making them. They're offering countries a choice. Align with a reliable partner who builds roads and invests in your economy, or align with a declining power that threatens you when it needs something. Guess which option most countries are picking. And here's the scariest part. We're helping them. Every ally we alienate is an ally China can recruit. Every trade deal we blow up is a deal China can offer. Every time the dollar struggles, the yuan gains credibility. We're not losing the competition with China because they're stronger. We're losing because we're making it easier for them. So what happens next? If we follow through on Greenland tariffs, NATO cracks. If NATO cracks, Europe diversifies. If Europe diversifies, the dollar weakens. If the dollar weakens, your cost of living spikes. And if China ends up writing the peace, they're not writing it with your interests in mind. They're writing it with theirs. The markets already see it. The archbishops already see it. The allies already see it. The only question left is, when do you? Because the clock's not stopping, and neither is Beijing.